I'm not saying I'm the greatest musician in the world, but I mean, I just, I try to be, different and try to give somewhat of an entertainment. And that's always been the purpose of the Mr. Moot, is to try to say, listen, God gave me a lot of talent and I don't want it to go to waste. And if I can utilize it in order to glorify God and spread the truth, then I'll do what I can where I can. And when I came up with the persona, or I should say the Holy Spirit came up with the persona of Mr. Moot, the idea obviously was as the full armor of God to, bring that metaphor to fruition as sort of a role model, if you will, to, younger audiences to say, listen, we can have a badass looking superhero for the Christians as well, And,
Yeah.
and we can definitely stand firm and vigilant, like Mr. Moot does, or like Paul tells us in Ephesians 6:5. So, that was the whole purpose of it. Some people, I don't want to, it's not that I was trying to make a gimmick or try to get somebody to buy into things. Obviously, like I said, I don't monetize anything. I'm not trying to sell anything here.
Yeah.
I just want people to be somewhat entertained or have something to iconic that they could go to and go, okay, this is that guy. Or, it's not just another, blah, blah, blah preacher behind a pulpit just saying whatever. I wanted to be a little bit more, with the now and the whole superhero craze that's been going on. I just wanted to kind of give my anti-hero to those heroes. And
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was an awesome idea. For me, I don't know. I can only present myself, and to be honest with you, I'm the youngest of four. Always felt like I was, never taken seriously, I guess. Like my parents didn't even plan me. They always said I was an accident. And so really, I was always feeling like, kind of like I had no self-esteem or whatever. And and honestly, like a lot of my siblings and my dad and everybody, like in my side of the family, is like very eccentric and very like always talking about this kind of crap at the dinner table, as inappropriate as it might be. I've always been the more soft-spoken one. So like once I started trying to create a voice for myself, I just felt like all this stuff is just starting to come out, and it's like, oh my gosh. The funny thing is, I feel like I've made more of an impact on the world than a lot of my family up to this point. Like that one video that I made has like 200,000 views already, and that's like, I thought I was like, holy crap, that's a lot of views. Yeah. And like you were saying, I just pieced the stuff together and kind of do my little commentary in between. And but the reality is, I kind of, positioned everything in a way to kind of build a narrative of what it is I was actually trying to say. And honestly, there's a lot of people that actually gave me some really good positive feedback, but I got a lot of negative feedback because it was really just trying to promote the concept of, God or some consciousness transcending the brain, in the sense that we will die and actually go somewhere after death. We're not just going to go die and we're just nothing after that. But I just think it's an important message to point out that we are more than just this speck and the vastness of space, and we're just more than goo that came out of the freaking pond or whatever. Obviously, there's a lot.
Lie is so grand in scale, because that's what it ultimately does. It makes us appear as if we are useless accident. Just like you said, we're just an accident. We're just another speck in the middle of hundreds of millions of other specks that have the same kind of life and predicaments on other planets and possibility. We just can't get there. And so, yeah, obviously it's going to give the secular world this idea that we don't have rules, and we're just all just a bunch of animals anyway. So, why not be gay? Why not, kill each other? Why not persecute this person? Why not, and when you get into a moral debate with atheists, it's always going to end up with them chasing their tails because they don't see the big picture that, you're always only going to claim that you're your own judge to everything. You're the one who makes up the rules, and you're the master, and you're the God if you don't accept an outside creator. So, and therefore, only your opinions or the way that you see it, even though you might agree with a lot of other people, you're still only basing your judgment and your perception and your quote unquote truth, which we all know there's only one truth. But that's what they do, is they try to frame in their own truth, and then and they'll obviously use that. Well, you have your truth and I have my truth. No, there's only one truth. There's not two different truths here. So
yeah. I never finished the thing I was trying to explain about the Sermon on the Mount. I realized that I left a couple things out that I was trying to explain. Basically, so like you were saying, there's one truth. I created I did a teaching called the Paradigm of Truth, and really what it comes down to is your filter needs to be correct to understand how to interpret information or how to interpret the truth. Because sometimes, that's why there's so many denominations. I mean, clearly we can see that people are misreading the information. There isn't there is one truth, and we got to figure out what that is. Jesus was the rock that I was trying to say that we are to build our foundation on the rock. And if we pattern our life after Jesus, that is exactly the path that we're supposed to be on. And
that's the truth.
And that is the truth. Exactly. That's ultimately what I'm trying to say, is that you could say that, oh, I have my truth. I think about that song. What the heck is it's not Incubus, but that other band that sounds like Incubus. But I can't think of the name of the band right now. But it says, "I'll go my own way and meet you in the end. Go my own way and meet you in the end." I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but
I don't know. Maybe if I heard it.
Yeah. So, anyways, but a lot of people say, "Oh, I have my truth. You have your truth." It's like, well, okay. So you think everything's subjective,
right.
Which I don't really think that everything's subjective. There is moral implication to everything that you believe, and that's one of the main reasons I do what I do, because I want people to really hone, and nobody freaking gives a crap. I literally will try to talk to people about this crap all the time, and they're just like, okay, whatever, man. It's like,
that's why all these different groups, they do justify their actions and their sins, and they'll say that it's their truth because they're only trying to justify what is the opposite or what they're doing that's not what we know as Christians is the truth. So if they're like, for instance, you got doctors who want to abort babies late term, and then sell the body parts, they make it. It's a good business. Abortion's a great business. Another big money making business. That's why it is, being still pushed to this day. And so these people are going to justify that. And that's why you'll have even homosexuals justify what they're doing that will support abortion, because they have their own sins to battle. So they have to justify that as well. If they see even supposed Christians or straight people acting promiscuous all throughout the 60s and the love movement and all that good stuff, and all throughout the 80s, and so it gives them again more justification for their lifestyle. Well, you guys do what you do, so why is that not okay? So everybody's guilty of justifying their actions and justifying their sins to fit into their own worldview and kind of mold their beliefs and understandings of what the world is and what their truth is. So it's sad because, like you said, they need filters. They don't understand that. One of my all-time favorite things that I always go back to, and this is why it's so easy to forgive people and so easy to just look beyond any pettiness with anybody, is the last words, basically, that, well, not the last words, but some of the last words that Christ spoke on the cross, when he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they don't know what they're doing." And that has always hit home with me in such a blatant, obvious description that we're just dumb little children, dumb little people that don't really get it, that we're not seeing the big picture. We don't understand spiritually, as we were talking of how everything does affect us and how everything is influencing us to act the way we do. And that's where you're hitting it on the mark when you say it is a spiritual thing. And we're all being influenced by either demonic or angelic forces. And Paul made that very clear in Ephesians. So we are dealing a spiritual realm that is constantly at battle around us, and that, obviously they have their goals. Satan wants to take down as many souls with him as he possibly can. He knows he's going to lose in the end, but he thinks it's funny, and he thinks it's a revengeful thing to do this to God's children. So he's going to keep doing it, and take every soul he can through every bit of deception. And when people say, how can that be the truth? When you get to a huge level of deception as something like the cosmology, then you say, well, how is that possible? And you're hearing this from people who obviously believe that evolution is a lie. And it's like, well, I don't understand why you think that Satan's lies would stop there. But stop at evolution or stop at.
That's a really
why
good
would you
point.
think that that's where he's just going to say, all right, that's cool. I think I fooled the whole world with science. So that's, evolution's good enough for me, to fool the world. I mean, why would he stop there? Satan's main goal and purpose is to deceive you and make you negate God and think the opposite of the word of God. So why wouldn't he do that? Why wouldn't he strive to make you think a complete opposite system of what the Bible teaches? It makes total logic. I mean,
that is the key question. And honestly, I'm connected to a guy through this thing called Northwest Science Museum. It's a museum that is dedicated to creation, and I actually was helping volunteer, and it was based out of Boise, Idaho here, and I met the founder and the president, who's now not the president, but he was a geologist, or he still is a geologist, and he's actually I think he's going to be retiring soon, but he's actually a geocentrist, and I'm like, if he's a geocentrist, I wonder, and he's a scientist, he's like literally a scientist, and how could you draw that conclusion? And I'm gonna have him on an interview too, I think, because he actually I think that he might have something to say about the whole flat Earth thing, but I don't know. I'm afraid to bring it up to him because I'm going to throw my credibility out the window. But at the same time, it's like, whatever. I mean, because honestly, whenever I talk about flat Earth on my channel, the people that most of my subs are from like the spiritual thinking crowd, the ones that are psychic and all this other freaking crap. And I'm not trying to play down that people might have some sort of gifting or whatever, but really that whole pursuit, I feel like, kind of throws God out too. Being a psychic or having some sort of like seer abilities. Sometimes, I was, one of the guys from my church was talking about reading a book about seers. And how there are Christian seers, I guess, that can see like spiritual, like say they get like an image in their head of a person, and they can see what sin that person's struggling with or something. I mean, I've heard of stuff like that, but the whole concept of just the consciousness, and so a lot of the people that are following my channel, they like when I talk about electric universe type stuff and the frequencies and things like that. They like hearing that topic. But as soon as I mention flat Earth, I see like 5 or 10 subs like gone. It's like, oh man, you can't even.
Yeah, but don't let that dictate. Your ability to. If you really believe in this stuff and you really have this evidence, or you've come across a subject that you feel relates to the flat Earth or whatever, and you want to share that, then don't be afraid, man. Just stand up and know that, God's word is the real word. If you've connected that with God's word in some way, and that makes you feel at peace, then that's great. But don't ever worry about subscribers I've given up on that years ago. So I'm like, I don't care if, again, like I said, I've got close to 4,000 subscribers, but barely get any views on my videos. So what's the point? It's like, well, who cares if I got 4,000 if I'm only getting 50 views? I mean, so it's one of those things where I feel like it isn't the most important subject. It isn't something that everybody should be harking on. And I think I've gotten to that stage where it's just matter of fact to me now. It's just like the back of my hand. So I look at it as it's not even really controversial to me anymore. It's just like, that's just the way I've come to accept it. Like the sky is blue and, water is wet. I mean, I've just come to learn to accept that. And until somebody can show me evidence refuting what I've found as evidence, then I'm going to continue believing that. So,
yeah, I've had this discussion with my brother in depth, and I'm not going to be surprised if he hears this interview because he follows my channel. But Brian, if you're listening to this, he basically he'll find most of this discussion very compelling, but he always errs on the side of his belief. And I feel like there could be good arguments for stuff that's happening in the heavens, like the sun and the moon and things like that. I can't explain everything about that. The thing that really just throws me for a loop is the seeing too far thing, or the flat horizon when you go up in a balloon, like 125,000 feet up in the atmosphere or whatever. The thing is, one of the things that kind of ties it all together too is the electric universe thing. I don't know if you've done any investigation on that, but the Thunderbolts Project talks a little bit about it, and I'm trying to remember the name of that guy, this like bald guy that has this Greek name or like Latin name or something for the title of his channel, but he was talking about light is actually it's a frequency or a field perturbation. It's a field theory. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically anything that interacts with a field will create resistance, and then it illuminates. It's not like the light is actually casting, photons or whatever. But it's actually like my face is actually illuminating because of it's interacting with the light field that's being projected from the lamp. So it's just it's like arguing semantics. It's like you can look at it from a different perspective if you consider the alternative perspective. And that's ultimately kind of the theme of my channel is really just what kind of bias are you projecting on the evidence?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Any philosopher, any scientist, or somebody who calls themselves a investigator of anything, or somebody who does experiments to figure out their own conclusions or whatever. And I think that a large part of it is, like you said, is bias to their own beliefs, and a large part of it is just their means of explaining to things to either themselves or to others how they perceive the world or how they perceive things. And a lot of it is either to negate or to glorify God. I mean, it's either one way or the other. Usually it's so. I guess a certain person who believes in certain things will have discernment more than others on certain subjects because it, like I said, it fits in with their narrative. It fits in with their already preconceived ideas of life and what they believe to be true. And so I know that there's a channel called what is it called? Truth is Stranger Than Fiction.
I know what one you're talking about.
Truth is Stranger Than Fiction, and I've had a few conversations with him, and he's really cool, and he looks into a lot of that, the metaphysical and the energy fields and whatnot. I believe when people say, "Well, what about gravity?" I say, "Well, I don't really I think gravity is a good example of somebody who made up a word or came up with an idea that explains why things fall or why things have weight or whatever. But I always say, well, it doesn't make sense, because if there was a hole that went all the way through the earth and you fell in that hole, you'd keep falling, wouldn't you? So at what point does gravity stop pulling you or pushing you? I mean, gravity does. To me, it makes more sense to say that there's a magnetic field that we harmonize in some way, and there's something that magnetically is obviously charging our atmosphere, or something that's affecting things. We know this by bumblebees, and we know this by certain beetles who don't actually fly. They use levitation. Yeah.
These are magnets that came out of a magnetron in a microwave.
I'm right here.
Hey, by the way, so these are like one of the most powerful magnets. Like, I'm afraid to have my fingers next to it because I'll get pinched. But I agree with you that there's some sort of I don't even think we can identify to it. I mean, there's density and buoyancy or whatever, but I think that there's another force that is pulling things down that we probably can't identify to. I mean, it's probably some sort of magnetism or whatever. But
even the explanation of pulling something down doesn't make sense, because it's like, okay, so it's pulling my weight down, but yet a butterfly can just flutter off of a thing. And then they try to tell us, well, gravity is what keeps everything kind of in its own system under this invisible atmosphere layer that keeps away the vacuum of space from sucking everything else in, and keeps everything stuck to the ball while it spins around, and people in Australia are upside down. And it's just like, well, but why is the plane that's like 4 tons able to just lift up off the ground? Because I mean, a lot of the things don't make sense to me as far as weight is concerned, where it doesn't add up to something sucking us or pulling us down. It doesn't. To me, it's just weight. It's just like you're going to fall because it's heavier than the air around you, or it's heavier than the atmosphere that we live in. And it's the same thing when they go to the ocean, or at the bottom of the ocean, and they run into this, salt. It's so salt,
the Great Salt Lake or whatever,
like a bubble that they bounce on.
Oh yeah, underneath the ocean. Yeah, I've seen those where they were trying to descend in the submarine down, and then it was just kind of, it looked like a lake underneath, or the water underneath the water or whatever. Right. But it was just like, it has more density.
Where they felt like the earth was like bouncing them back up, and it wouldn't let them go any deeper. But they knew that there was water under that. They just couldn't go there. And so, I don't know what that's about, but is that where gravity ends? I don't that where buoyancy.
No, that's a good point. Have you heard of the channel John Thor?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, so I think you'll like a lot of his stuff. He doesn't necessarily come at it from the Christian perspective, but he talks a lot about science and just people that make really good points. So he just put out a video called World-Renowned Astrophysicist Exposed. And there was this guy that freaking did an interview with this scientist under a different alias. So he actually made up an alias and tricked the scientist into having an interview with him. And I think he was masquerading as like some sort of media personality or something. But they were sitting there, like, he was asking her questions like, oh yeah, we've been having people ask these questions about, and then he starts like asking these questions that were pertaining to flat earth, and he was leading right into the whole flat earth thing. And once she was on to him, she started like throwing a temper tantrum, and like she sort of like, she couldn't handle the conversation. I'm not going to have that conversation with you. I don't even have to address this because the science has been decided. And it was, you got to hear it. It's called John Thor. You got to look up his channel. It's pretty good stuff.
Science wasn't really decided until like the 1940s, until NASA became the first administration, and of course the Russians. And I don't know if you've ever seen the collection of the U.S. government documents and the Russian government documents and other countries as well, but all different kind of companies, Boeing, Lear, all kinds of different companies that use the terms stationary, flat Earth, for their mathematics in just about every one of these supposed uncovered documents. And there's one from Russia where they straight up admitted they don't even know what the shape of the Earth was by 1945. They still didn't know what the real true shape of the Earth was. So in the early 1900s, at the turn of when you always hear people say, well, for hundreds of years or thousands of years, people have always known. Christopher Columbus, Aristotle, all these people already proved that the Earth is round. And it's like, well, how come in the early 1900s, it was heresy if you were teaching in schools that the Earth was round? You know, everybody in the early 1900s, especially here in America, believed the Earth was flat because it was closer in tune with biblical cosmology. And the Bible is the reason that public schools were even invented, so that we could learn to read the Bible. So, of course, back then, it's not that long ago. It only started happening in the 40s when when the space race began. And obviously, when you connect the puzzles and the pieces of the puzzle, you'll realize that all of the excavations to Antarctica and all the things that people explored on their boundaries and whatnot probably realized that, this isn't what we think it is, or how are we going to hide this, or whatever. So
and how much too,
if they figure out what it is and they don't want to tell us, it kind of makes sense why. I mean, I would say if the elite wanted to keep it secret, especially Satan, who's in charge of this world, who we know is the ruler of this world, wants to keep the system of God a secret, and he wants to keep us enslaved in this system, then that's what the narrative they want to give people, is that we live in a vast universe. And again, that's where it connects to this end times alien deception. You can't have that end times alien deception if we don't have a spinning globe hurling through space. You know, you can't have that. So
yeah, you know, people will say, why would NASA or governments try to hide all this? I personally believe that NASA was created to hide it, and not just that, but Disney was there to propagate it. And
Disney, Jack Parsons, who was an occultist.
Jack Parsons, freaking Aleister Crowley.
Yes. All of these people had involvement with NASA. And the very first administrator that was hired to NASA I'm blown away that people don't bring this up more often. The very first administrator that was hired by NASA to be the head of NASA, his only experience before that was working as a Hollywood manager, a Hollywood studio manager, producer. So what does it have to do with rocket science or astronomy or any of that stuff? Why would that be the first go-to guy they hire to be the head of NASA? Because it's a Hollywood production, because that's all it's based on. It's just Hollywood, the whole thing. And that's what I'm saying. If these people really, really wanted to prove flat earthers stupid, and they really wanted to prove us all wrong and shut us all up, all they have to do is attach high definition cameras to their rockets, launch them off. And I've said this in the last video, have Donald Trump or somebody we know that is an iconic face near the rocket site, and have a couple cameras that you can zoom in from the rocket onto that person, because we do have the technology to do that. So it's not like, well, no, that costs too much, or we don't have the technology to do that. That's insane. You're going to tell me we can see a black hole that's 5 million times 6 billion miles away, but you can't even zoom in on the bumper of the moon buggy and show us that. So that's what I'm talking about. We don't get the answers. And if you really want to shut people up and prove that they're ignorant about the shape of this world, then when are we ever going to get a video footage of a rocket leaving this Earth, like going to Mars or the moon or wherever, nonstop, not edited, from launched all the way to its destination? Why aren't we getting footage of that at all, ever? It's just blows my mind.
I admit I'm a little bit of a skeptic. I don't even know if I'd believe that. but then again, I mean, because they could do pretty much anything with CGI nowadays. But then again, I mean, obviously if they did something, I want to see them put like a freaking camera on the moon and filming, have something where we can monitor the Earth.
Right. And so see the weather, and we can verify, okay, it's raining in Florida, and there's Florida right there on the video, we can see that the clouds are right over here at this part or whatever. You know what I'm saying? You should be able to
Yeah,
verify
and
them.
the Earth would be bigger in the sky there because I mean Earth is like what 4 times bigger than the moon, so he,
Right.
which is funny because
When
it
you see
always looks
NASA
small.
pictures, oh yeah, you see NASA pictures of the little tiny Earth behind the astronaut's head. You're like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I made this. I got to wrap this up here in just a few minutes, but and I'll get some. I'll let you have a closing statement here in a second. But so I made this video about the 70-mile shadow that the moon casts onto the Earth during an eclipse or whatever, and I did some investigating on that, and I thought either the okay, so you know the difference between so look at my face. You can see the shadow.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, so
Same.
like when the Earth crosses the path of the moon light, it literally will engulf the moon completely, right? Like when there's okay, I'm hypothetically speaking from a geocentric perspective. So if the Earth crosses over the sun in front of the moon, and the moon is completely covered in a lunar eclipse, right? So, but if you're doing a solar eclipse, you can only see a 70-mile shadow. So, why is there such a vast difference in shadows between the two? Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. I know
So,
exactly.
people couldn't wrap their head around it, or I just didn't present it well. But like I understand the whole umbra and penumbra thing. In fact, I actually did my own little test where I put the light. If the light is bigger, like if the light is actually bigger than whatever's casting the shadow, then the light can actually converge into a point. And yeah, I can see how that shadow would be smaller. But at the same time, I just don't know how the Earth doesn't do the same thing to the moon. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, and my thing is I don't believe that the moon is obviously what they tell us as far as that the sunlight is reflecting off of the moon's surface, and that's why the moon has its own light. I don't believe that at all. There's way too much evidence against that, especially what I was referring to earlier when the sun and the moon are in the sky at the same time. The waxing and waning of the moon makes no sense in comparison to where the light is fixated from the sun. The positioning of the sun and the waxing and waning of the moon don't match up. They don't add up. And so to me, that's an obvious point that the
So
sun
let
doesn't
me.
have anything to do with the illumination of the moon at all.
I gotta ask you though, because I've had some trouble with the moon. Like, do you ever notice like when it's a crescent or a half moon, it actually flips over as it goes over the horizon or overhead and then back around it? It basically flips upside down. Um, so I was looking at it. It almost appears like the moon is trying to project in a way that is leading us into thinking that it's following the sunlight. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I'm almost.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It
I
does follow the same path. Now, I'm not saying that it's not following the same path, but when you can see, you know, on a typical day, just I think it was yesterday, I looked up in the sky and saw, the sun probably at about 2 o'clock in the sky, and then the moon probably about 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock. But like I said, the lighting on the moon had no relation to where the sun was positioned in the sky, where you would think, okay, if the sun really is as big as it is and the moon is where it is, then that whole face of the moon should be lit up if that's what's making the light. If the sun is making the light, there should be no reason why that has a waxing and a waning on it. And if you've ever noticed when there is a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse I think it's a lunar eclipse, it's not until right before it happens that the moon even comes into appearance. And I'm like, well, how come you can see the moon going around during the daytime at the same time as the sun sometimes? But when a lunar eclipse occurs, you don't see the moon in the sky until right in front of right before it's in front of the sun. Like it just appears nowhere. It's just like, ta-da, there it is.
yeah.
I mean, they can obviously track and know when it's going to happen and when it's going to go in front of it, but you don't see it. I'm like,
Yeah.
how you don't see it like you see on this day or that day? And so I don't know. It's just, I think that in all reality, the stars, according to the Bible and especially the Book of Enoch, and I'm not sure how much you believe in Enoch, but I tend to believe that it is, just because it's not canonical of the Bible. It has
Yeah.
great legitimacy because it was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I believe that
Yeah.
there is definitely legitimacy behind the Book of
They
Enoch.
say it's a pseudepigrapha, but I don't really know how they draw that conclusion, other than maybe they just looked at it like it was a poetic writing or something. I don't know. But I'm not. I
Jesus
actually
himself
lean
quotes
toward
from
it
it.
being
So,
legit. What's
yeah,
that?
yeah, even Jesus himself quotes from it. So I mean, or alludes to the fact that he's read the Book of Enoch. So
Hmm.
you can tell a lot of the things that Enoch had written
Yeah,
are
Jude.
very same as what Jesus had said. So at any rate, the point is that, according to him, they are supernatural things, and the stars are beings. They're actually beings that are placed in the sky, which would make sense if you look at the stars in a telescope. That's why they look like fluttering lights
Yeah.
underwater. No matter what kind of zoom capability you have for a star, that's what you're going to look. You're going to see a circular object with all kinds of weird, dilly
Yeah.
dallies around it. But there are guys out there that have taken really phenomenal pictures with using special filters on their cameras and whatnot, or
Yeah,
using
I'm trying to
just,
something Leonard Walson. Do you know? I want to say John Leonard Walson or something like that. Do you know who I'm talking about?
is that the guy that did the Skywalker
Yeah,
video?
he changed the filter and it almost looks like there's spaceships or something up there.
Well, that's the guy I think you're talking about. That's in Fort Lauderdale or somewhere, and he has like two
Maybe.
lenses, and he uses like a ultra red or ultraviolet lens, and he's got two of them together, and he's like picking up things that normally people can't see during the day or the night or whatever, just always flying around in the sky. But then there's the other guy that filmed these stars that I think it's on one of my videos. It might be on that alien video that I did at the end of that alien, the film deception video I did.
Hmm.
You can see the guy has these star structures that look like spaceships. They look like crystal cities or just weird shapes. And he claims he was pointing his camera right at the stars themselves, and these are the shapes that he got from them. So you can tell that these aren't burning balls of gas or whatever science wants us to believe they are. I'm even still baffled of the whole mathematical understanding of parallax and how people think that we can actually determine how far a star away is. It blows my mind that people are that gullible that they believe that we can really determine that. It's just
Yeah.
ridiculous to me. So
Yeah.
I do believe, when people always ask me, well, what is the sun? I believe it's something that's interdimensional, and that might even be the situation with the moon, because I think it's waxing and waning is like, it's something that's automatic. It's something that's on its own little time clock, and it does, it spins around within it, or it does something to change supernaturally or whatever. But I don't think it has anything to do with the sun. As far as the only relationship it has with the sun is that it's God gave us a light for the day and a light for the night. And it definitely makes sense that if the moon is the light for the night, of course it's going to give off a cooling effect of its light, because it's going to cool the earth. And that's what God would want for the night, after it's been heated up the sun all day. So,
oh, by the way, I did an experiment on that too. Um, what the heck is that guy's name? That did balls out physics. I'm trying to remember his name.
Brian.
Brian. Yeah. Yes.
I know who you're talking about. He's awesome.
I can't remember. Anyway, he had too many people saying flat Earth is crazy, and he couldn't handle it anymore.
I guess he caved in.
Too much credibility that he would lose, I guess. But anyways, no, he was doing a moon light test to see if it was cold, and then he kind of challenged his listeners to do it, and so I ended up doing it, and I made a video first that showed, like, I was doing a test, like if light is shining against the wall, if it would actually change temperatures in the shadow versus the wall that has light projected on it. And I found that the light, just a light bulb, will show that there's a difference of like 2 or 3 degrees just in the light. So I mean, it goes up; it doesn't go down.
Right, right.
But I went outside and I freaking woke up in the middle of the night to freaking do my testing, and I could definitely see a change in temperature in the light of the moon. But the thing that I became a skeptic was I wasn't sure if it just was because it was not under the patio, because the patio was the shadow, but it was also acting like a barrier from like any cold air coming out of the sky. Um, so I was kind of skeptical in the sense that maybe that is the reason why it was cooler out in the open or under the moonlight. But I on my car, like I tested different materials, like I did brick and I did wood and I did metal, and there was a vast difference on metal. Like I could see I don't know, a difference of like 8 or 9 degrees or something like that. But again, I question maybe the only thing that I could say that my car was out in the open and it was not in the shadow on one spot, but it was in the shadow of the house on another spot, but it was still under the sky evenly. It wasn't like, so that was the one thing that I saw the difference in temperature between the shadow and the moonlight. And there was definitely a colder moonlight than in the shadow.
My son and I, my son's 16, but a couple of years ago, we did his science project was based on that actual experiment. And we did the same thing where we did several different surfaces. We did asphalt, we did concrete, we did the grass, we did, different materials like you were talking about. We did them all, each one of them 3 times to make sure we were getting them right. We did it like, a scientist should do when they're doing their testing. So, but yeah, every time, no matter what it was, we were always getting a different result than if in the shadow or in the moonlight. And so it was obvious to me that there's definitely a cooling effect that light has. And it makes sense when you think about just scripture. When I first discovered that or learned that, I was like, doy, it's like, makes
like a balance. It's balancing.
God makes a sun that heats up the day and lights up the day, and then a moon that cools off the earth at night and lights up as well. So why would he not do that? That makes complete logical sense to me. I mean, so, it's fascinating. All of it really is fascinating. And I think that's the wonderful, beautiful thing about life that we have is that we can all speculate, we can all wonder, and we're never really going to truly know until we do meet our Creator. And I like to think that we'll get all the answers to this earthly world when we go to our spiritual body. But again, I don't believe that God is going to allow us to even remember this earth as it is. And I don't think that any of that's going to be important to us in spiritual body, So I mean, I think it's very interesting living on this earth and living as a human and just anticipating, Christ's return. And I think that obviously we all know, or you and I know, and hopefully everybody else out there knows that truly that's the only thing that's important is that we are saved, that we understand the truth of Christ, that we do adhere to his teachings. And I know you were talking a little bit earlier about works, and it's all very clear in Scripture that it's about our hearts, and we see that even in the book of King David and Psalms and stories with King David, where we know he wasn't a perfect man. He didn't do good works, but God loved him still because he knew his heart and he knew what his intent is, and he knew how much he was repentant for what he had done. So it is in our hearts, and God knows your heart, and you can't hide from that. And that's the greatest thing about our Creator is that I think that's the most empowering thing as a Christian, because you can't hide from it. And make all the excuses you want. You can say it's your own truth. You can try to justify all of your actions and your sins all you want. But in the end, you're not going to hide from God. You can't. And he knows your heart. And that's really, really, really ultimately where your works come from. He knows what your intent is. He knows that you're trying your best in the circumstances that you live in. And if you listen to discernment and you listen to the Holy Spirit tell you when to move, and how to move, then there's no excuse. You know, God's going to judge you based on that. And we all know that as a Christian, we're honestly, the Bible tells us that we're not really even going to be judged for those things, that all of our things will be washed upon the ocean floor and forgotten, and it won't even really matter. So a lot of people do get hung up on the works, and they allow Satan to whisper these things in their ears and his cohorts to influence us and make us think that we're not worthy, and make us think that we're not doing the works that God wants us to do, and we're not doing, you know, the things. And living like Christ even knows himself is really difficult, and it's especially in this world. And when I say really difficult, I mean the extremity of temptation and the inundation of sin that we live in this modern world. Some will say is nothing new. You know, some will say, you know, they had the same kind of stuff back then, but I know at least in Jesus's times, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have a lot of the things that we deal with, that is just bombarding, especially the young minds of this world, with all kinds of lies, all kinds of deceit. And it is hard. It's hard to see through the fog. As you said earlier, it's hard to know what's true and what's not. It's hard to, you know, discern that. But I think it's far more important for a person to dwell on those things than it is for them to sit and waste their time watching sports on the couch, or, you know, or worrying about just stupid entertainment, or whether Kanye is really a Christian, or you know,
I know, no kidding.
All of the nonsense that people dwell on. I think that the flat earth and the deceptions of this world and all those things are far more interesting and far more important than the other things that people dwell on. And why do they dwell on those things? Because it's easy, and it's a lie, and it's something that
popular,
you know, people cling to, and yeah, they want to be a part of, to justify their sins. And it's sad, because we live in a world that's I always tell people the two main things that you can always trace back any problem or any issue in your life or anybody else's life is one of two things. It's either stupidity or ignorance, not knowing something, not being aware of something, or just plain selfishness, sometimes both. But that's usually the root problem of every single issue you can ever have in life. And if you can understand how to overcome those issues and understand those problems, and like I said earlier, always think of Jesus' words, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't get it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in this world that are just blind, and they're not going to see. They're not going to, and it even tells us that they're going to stay blind, and that it's actually a veil that's put over their eyes for being ignorant for so long, that that's it. It's too late for you. It's just unfortunate, because you're just not going to see it. You've turned your back on God for so long, and then, you know, eventually you've drowned yourself in a sea of lies, and so you're just not going to get it. So hopefully, you know, I guess that's my closing words, is that, you know, we can all understand what discernment is and what truth is, and know that obviously the most important thing is our salvation, and knowing the truth in Christ, and knowing that he is coming back soon, and we probably, by the looks of things, don't have a long time to be getting our souls right with Christ. And there's too many things in this world that are so apparent to, you know, us dealing with the end time situations right now. So nobody knows the day or the hour, but God tells us to, you know, Jesus tells us to keep looking to the sky. And isn't that an interesting thing for Jesus to say, is that we should look up? You know,
if you're a flat earther, you're going to be looking up all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Trying to figure things out.
Well, yeah, you got to wonder, how is the curtain or the veil of heaven, you know, going to be drawn back like a cloth, you know, how is all the heavens and the stars going to be pulled back like a cloth? It kind of makes more sense in a flat earth than it does than a globe. So who knows? I mean, it's just it's a wonderful thing to be, you know, curious, and as one of my favorite coined phrases that I've come up with is, you know, condemnation before investigation is your admission to indoctrination.
Yeah.
and if you, it blows most people's minds away when I tell them that don't think about things on a deeper level. But when they listen to that and understand that, then it opens their minds a little bit more, where they can say, you know what, I would look foolish, I would look stupid if I don't look into these matters, or if I just sit here and mock this guy and make him, out to be some lunatic, crazy person without actually doing the investigating myself. So you're only admitting your own ignorance if you want to mock somebody else over something you don't understand and that you haven't done the research in. So
yeah, I just want people to have the discussion. I'm not trying to advocate for, yeah, we should discuss flat Earth in school. I don't know. I mean, to be honest with you, I just don't want people to muzzle the conversation.
I'd rather talk about creationism in school than the flat Earth. I
yeah,
mean, I'd rather that be the first step for us to understand that evolution is a lie, and that, or at least that's a scientific, religious alternative to what we believe as Christians. So there should be the choice that students should be allowed to make openly, and not be told, no, this is the way it is. This has already been set in stone. This is the way science sees it. And as we said from the very beginning, the whole notion that scientists are the authoritative figures of telling us what is real and what is not in this natural or supernatural world is bogus, and that's a religion, and it shouldn't be allowed. So
yeah. Well, it sounds like we're in agreement on a lot of stuff, and I mean, I'm happy that there's people out there, you specifically, that I can actually get on Skype and just have a chat. I think it's awesome, and I hope we can definitely keep in touch. I mean, I could literally talk to you for hours, and I'm realizing that I got to get up at 4 a.m. Mountain Time. So actually, I'll probably wake up at 5. Screw it. But anyways, yeah, I have one more day of work for the week, so I'm gonna knock it out and I'll be done with it. But this is my passion. I'm trying to pursue truth, trying to pursue the knowledge of the Lord, and trying to figure out what it is that He has for me. Because obviously we're trying to be His hands and His feet, and I don't think that the job's going to get done unless somebody does it. But God ultimately will use the rocks or a talking donkey or whatever if He has to. But I believe that it's more worthwhile and more effective for His people to actually stand up and start doing stuff. And so I encourage you in that. And I'm just trying to build up my arsenal and my fuel for the fire by getting you on the phone here, trying to build each other up, because we need to get ready for battle and be ready for freaking, and just sharpening each other, So so I guess with that, your channel's Mr. Moot.
So Sacred Defiance, yeah, Mr. Moot, Sacred Defiance. Like it, it's primarily I put up music videos, original songs that I've created that are usually focused around Christian element and scripture. Obviously, I dip into subject matter such as the flat earth, sometimes politics. My last video is about Trump. So yeah, I mean, that I don't have too much activity on it, but it's it's something, like I said before, if I feel compelled enough to get on there, and knowing that there's like-minded people like yourself and fellow that I can have fellowship with and speak to like this, it's really encouraging. And it's I'd like to get more of a community to understand that I'm not just some weird nut job in a costume, just blurting out flat Earth all the time. Is there's a lot more to life than flat Earth, and a lot more subjects and topics that we can all talk about and agree on and explore even further. So as long as we keep to our core values and stay vigilant and remain to support each other and back each other, and I always look at other, YouTube viewers or people who claim to be Christian that I follow on or subscribe to on YouTube, and sometimes it is kind of discerning, or it's kind of a little heartbreaking when I reach out to some of these guys and they either ignore me, or most of the time that's what they do, is they just ignore me. They don't answer back, or I don't hear from them, or
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm thinking, well, what is it that I've done? Did I offend you? Did I say something that I shouldn't have, or you just not agree with my views? Or I'm a brethren, man. I'm a fellow Christian, and if there's something you don't agree with me, then please, call me out. That's what we're here to do. And righteous judgment. I don't have any problem with that. So if it would be very nice if I could get the support and backing of a lot of Christians. And one of the things that kind of bothered me in the past was when I reached out to Robbie Davidson, who puts on
Yeah.
the. But now God has shown me why that never came to fruition and why He's kept me away from that crowd. So which I'm thankful for. And you start learning some more and more things about people, and realizing, okay, that's why that's why Christ made sure that I didn't get involved with these people, because there's a lot of controversial things that surround those that are involved with the Flat Earth Conference. And
Yeah.
I don't think that a lot of people who call themselves Christian and obviously monetize greatly off of that subject are genuine for the most part. So, but that's not really for me to say. Obviously, that's for God to decide, and He'll give me the discernment enough to say, hey, this is somebody, Charlie is somebody that's great that you need to talk to, and get involved with, or this person isn't, or that person isn't. So that's number one thing. Besides discernment, I want people to know how awesome faith is. That's one of my favorite subjects, is the true power of faith, and how faith really works, and how your prayers can be answered almost immediately sometimes. I mean, it's amazing how, when you really truly have a faith from the heart, and you really have given everything to Christ, you've given every bit of your fear, every bit of any worry or anything that you would let burden you. I mean, that's why He says time and time again, bring me your burdens, put them on my shoulders. And it's true, because that's how you really have a true faith. And I can't tell you how many blessings and answered prayers, and not always in my favor, but I'm given an answer. I might not like that answer, but I'm given an answer. And like even yesterday, I was having a discussion with my wife at dinner, because I have some things on eBay for sale that I've been trying to get rid of for a while. And one particular big thing was a biker scout trooper Star Wars 501st costume that I had created and had up for a while. And I started speaking to her about not speaking negatively or doubtfully or pessimistically about things, and how even non-Christians will tell you that part of the secret to success of life is speaking positively things into fruition. And as a faith-based Christian, that's extremely important, and that's how it really truly works, because your faith is in God. And I think it works even more so for Christians than it does secular world. But
well, I think it's built into our nature to project positive thinking, and just walking in it, and then things come to fruition as you project. Just, it's like your demeanor, however you hold yourself will determine how the outcome of your reality, so to speak. And I mean, I'm trying to remember, like the Secret or something like that. You'd mentioned The Secret to the that reminds me of the documentary that I watched a long time ago. It's kind of new agey in the sense of but there's some truth to that, in my opinion, about just the power of suggestion, or the power of thought, or the power of projection, or I don't even know what you want to call it. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you about that.
It's not even really a state of mind, as a train of thought or process that you think in your mind to make yourself believe. Having that faith is a feeling in the heart, and it's something that's it is a connection between the mind and the heart, but it's definitely it's not something that you train yourself to think and to try to want to believe or put yourself into a frame of mind of saying, okay, that's my worldview or whatever. It's something that's far deeper than that, and that's where it connects with the spiritual realm. But
Yeah.
I know we're getting late into this, and I know you gotta get up. Like you said, we could talk for hours, man. We should try another part 2 again pretty soon. But
Yeah, we should. I mean, I'm going to try to make this a regular thing where I just get people. I always like listening to the documentary that I watched a long time ago. It's kind of new agey in the sense of like it, but there's some truth to that, in my opinion, about just the power of suggestion or the power of thought or the power of projection, or I don't even know what you want to call it. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you about that.
it's not even really a state of mind, as a train of thought or process that you think in your mind to make yourself believe. Having that faith is a feeling in the heart, and it's something that's it is a connection between the mind and the heart, but it's definitely it's not something that you train yourself to think and to try to want to believe or put yourself into a frame of mind of saying, okay, that's my worldview or whatever. It's something that's far deeper than that, and that's where it connects with the spiritual realm. But
Yeah.
I know we're getting late into this, and I know you gotta get up. Like you said, we could talk for hours, man. We should try another part 2 again pretty soon. But
yeah, we should. I mean, I'm going to try to make this a regular thing where I just get people. I always like listening to interesting conversations, and I kind of want to go down that road with my channel now, and not to mention, you're getting in front of my subscriber base, and I don't know if this video comes out okay. I'll send you a link, and you can do whatever you want with it. So anyways, no, I appreciate all your time. I like to know you better as David myself, just because you have an identity as far as I can tell.
I don't have anything to hide, honestly. but Mr. Moot is how a lot of people know me on YouTube. So
no, it's good though. I mean, that's how I know you. But again, my name, or my channel name, is 4bztruth. 4bz is actually Forbes. So it's the last name, right. My last name, Forbes. So there's nothing special about it. It just
somebody will read in some sort of Illuminati meaning.
Well, look at my hat.
Yeah.
Can you see it right here?
Yeah.
It looks like a triangle.
Yeah.
Well, like it says dryer on fire, and there's an O right over the triangle. So it almost looks like an eyeball could be there.
Yeah.
It's my side business, but anyways. Trust me, the Illuminati has nothing to do with my business. Well, I can say that.
Video I put up from my business where I had a checkerboard floor. They're like, "Aha, Freemason!" And I'm like, no, that's just the to-go, flooring for a business. I mean, come on.
I know. Anyways, man. But yeah, let's keep in touch, and yeah, freaking stay in it. Keep making videos, and I'll see you on the other side.
All right, Charlie, man, it was awesome talking to you, buddy.
Yeah, you too. I'll talk to you.
Continue to bless you and keep you strong, buddy.
You too, man.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.